Picture breakfast for a second. Bread browned in butter, soft in the middle, warm enough to catch a little sugar or syrup. It feels familiar, comforting, almost plain. Then you hear the name, French toast. Suddenly the dish sounds more elegant than it looks. It sounds specific, almost official, as if it must have come from France and then traveled outward to the rest of the world. But the name tells a cleaner story than history does. French toast did not begin as a refined national dish. It began as a practical answer to a very old kitchen problem. What do you do with bread that is stale, but still good? Follow that question backward, and this breakfast leads far beyond France, through ancient Rome, medieval Europe, English cookbooks, and the strange power of language to make ordinary food sound grander than it really is. Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. What French toast really is. The fastest way to understand French toast is to ignore the name and look at the bread. Fresh bread is soft, fragrant, and inviting for only a short time. Then it dries out. In a modern kitchen, that may feel like a small disappointment. In older kitchens, it was not. Bread took labor, grain, time, and money. Letting it go to waste meant losing food that still had value. That is the real logic behind this dish. French toast exists because stale bread is not useless. It only needs help. Soak it in milk, coat it in egg, put it into a hot pan. What was dry softens. What was plain becomes rich. What seemed almost finished becomes worth eating again. That transformation matters more than the label ever did. Long before French toast became a weekend favorite, it belonged to a much older kitchen instinct. If something can be revived, it should be revived. This is why the dish feels timeless. It is not built on luxury, it is built on recovery. The original genius of French toast is not that someone invented a beautiful breakfast. It is that someone found a way to turn yesterday's bread into today's meal. And once that idea existed, it was never going to stay in one place. The idea was already there in ancient Rome. Long before modern France existed, cooks in the Roman world were already preparing dishes that followed the same basic pattern. One of the earliest known references appears in the cookbook commonly attributed to Apicius, usually dated to the 4th or 5th century CE. The method sounds surprisingly familiar: bread soaked in milk and beaten egg, then fried, sometimes finished with honey. The Romans did not call it French toast. They did not frame it as a national specialty. It was simply a practical way to use bread that had lost its freshness. That detail matters. It shows that the dish was never at its core about national identity. It was about usefulness. Bread hardened quickly, food mattered, waste had consequences. A careful kitchen could turn leftovers into comfort, and that is how many everyday foods begin. Not with prestige, but with a small domestic problem and a solution simple enough to repeat. Once people discovered that egg and milk could soften stale bread, and that heat could make it satisfying again, the idea became portable. Any place with bread could understand it. Any household that disliked waste could repeat it. How the dish spread across medieval Europe. As centuries passed, the dish continued traveling through Europe, changing names as it moved. Foods that belong to daily life often spread quietly. They pass from kitchen to kitchen, not as glamorous inventions, but as habits people keep because they work. In German-speaking regions, one version became known as arm Ritter, usually translated as poor knights. In England, similar preparations were sometimes called pain perdu, a word borrowed from the French pain perdu, meaning lost bread. In France itself, the name that endured was pain perdu. Different names, same idea. None of those names point to prestige. They point to recovery. Bread that was too dry to enjoy on its own could still be brought back. Medieval cookbooks in both England and France include versions of the dish. Bread soaked in egg and milk, then fried in butter or oil. The details vary, but the logic does not. By the Middle Ages, the recipe itself was already old. It was not uniquely French. It belonged to a broad European tradition of thrift cooking. shaped by the simple desire to feed people well without wasting useful food. Which means the real mystery is not how the dish was made. The real mystery is how English eventually gave it a name that sounded far more polished than its humble past. When French started sounding like quality, by the 17th century the phrase French toast had begun appearing in English. One of the earliest printed examples comes from Robert May's The Accomplished Cook in 1660. The recipe itself was already old. What was new was the name. Why add French? Because in English-speaking culture the word often suggested elegance and refinement. Calling something French did not always mean it came from France. Sometimes it simply meant the dish sounded more stylish. That may be what happened here. French toast was a humble dish with a practical past, but once the word French was attached, the same bread suddenly sounded more sophisticated. So the name may not describe where the dish came from, it may describe how people wanted it to sound. The myth and the name France actually uses. A popular story claims the dish was named after a man called Joseph French in 18th century Albany, New York. Supposedly he meant to write French as toast, but forgot the apostrophe. It is a neat story, but historians do not accept it. The term French toast already appeared in English before that time. And in France, the dish is not called French toast at all. The traditional name is pain perdu, which means lost bread. The phrase reveals the dish's true purpose: bread that seemed destined for waste, rescued, and turned into something warm and satisfying. Not elegant bread, not national bread, rescued bread. That is what makes pain perdu such a revealing name. It tells the truth more plainly than French toast ever could. It does not pretend the dish began in glamour. It points back to the original idea: save something ordinary before it disappears. And here is one of the clearest truths in the whole story. France does not commonly call the dish French toast. That name is an English label applied from the outside, not a translation from the French kitchen itself. If there is one line worth remembering, it is this: French toast did not begin in France. It began with people trying not to waste bread. How it became a modern breakfast classic. Once French toast took hold in English, it stopped needing to be historically precise. It only needed to be familiar. By the time the dish settled into everyday life in Britain and North America, the name was already established. American cookbooks in the 18th and 19th centuries continued using the term, helping fix it in ordinary language. A printed name becomes repeatable. A repeatable name becomes normal. Then the 20th century made it even stronger. As packaged sliced bread became common and breakfast culture expanded, French toast became an easy, recognizable staple. It moved from practical home cooking into diners, restaurant menus, cookbooks, and advertising. The more often people saw the phrase, the less likely they were to question it. At some point, the name stopped behaving like an explanation. It simply became the accepted title of a familiar comfort food. And that is often how language wins over history. The more ordinary a phrase becomes, the less pressure it feels to be exact. Familiarity does the rest. French versions of pain perdu are often simple, sometimes flavored with sugar, vanilla, or cinnamon. In the American imagination, by contrast, French toast often arrives thick-cut and generous, covered with syrup, fruit, butter, or powdered sugar. The style may change, but the base idea remains the same: stale bread transformed into something rich, comforting, and welcome. The quiet truth behind the name French toast sounds precise, but its history is much wider than the name suggests. The breakfast on the plate today carries traces of ancient Rome, medieval thrift, English naming habits, French terminology, and the quiet endurance of home cooking. It traveled farther than its title admits. And somewhere along the way, a dish born from practicality picked up a name that made it sound more refined than its origins. In the end, French toast is not really a story about France. It is a story about how ordinary foods move through history, gathering new labels and new meanings as they go. A simple solution for stale bread became a breakfast classic, and the label that stayed was not the most accurate one. It was the one that felt familiar, graceful, and easy to keep saying. That may be the most human part of the whole story. We simplify, we rename, we let comfort outrun precision. And sometimes that means the most ordinary thing on the table is carrying a much longer journey than it first appears. Behind a few slices of browned bread is a chain of kitchens, languages, and people trying, in their own quiet way, not to let good food go to waste. If you enjoyed discovering the hidden story behind something as ordinary as French toast, there are many more everyday mysteries waiting here. The things we see all the time often carry histories we rarely stop to notice. So if you're curious about the quiet stories behind the foods, objects, and habits we take for granted, consider subscribing. And if there's a simple thing you've always wondered about, leave it in the comments. It might inspire the next story we explore.